City Mills, and it has a little F in parentheses, or not a little F, it has a capital F in parentheses here. The importance of that is we have divided the community up and have had for some time in the different planning districts. And Bibb City area, City Mills area, is our planning district F for planning purposes. And we want you to bring you to some attention in terms of some of the demographics that are going on here, in terms of the number of high school graduates, which is like 36%. Some that have access from college are 28%, and then there's others that with bachelor's or graduate degrees at 11%. Just want to point that out, and then there's also things in here like median income and total homeowners and so forth. That's all important information I think that you need to have and need to share with one another about what's going on in each one of these areas that we're getting ready to talk about. We're primarily getting ready for this next session to talk about what's going on in Bibb City, the Bibb City area, the City Mills area, and so forth. And we want to lead off with that by bringing to you, hold on, let me catch up here, Marquette McKnight. Now, Marquette, of course, I'm not going to insult your intelligence here by reading this stuff to you, if I can get to it. Where are you? There you are. Of course, Marquette is the founder of Media Marketing and more. And again, like I said, I'm not going to read this brief introduction here, or resume, whatever you want to call it here, but I do want to point one thing out to you. It says, it has been said that Marquette's brain contains more creative and marketing experience for Columbia, Georgia than any other person in the area. You need to highlight that one and underscore it, because that's about the most truthful thing you're going to hear today, I think, from anybody. Because in the time that I have known Marquette over the years, she brings the energy and the enthusiasm and the desire to make things happen in this community. And we want to invite her to come now and speak to us about this idea of what's going on in the Mill District and what they're trying to accomplish. So please welcome Marquette McKnight.
Gosh, thank you, Rick, for that lovely compliment. There's nothing like following John Hutchison and blight and destruction. So I can only go up from here. I am delighted to be with y'all today and to talk about the Mill District. And we're going to talk a little bit about sort of the areas of the Mill District and how they have worked in Columbus. A little bit of background about how we got to where we are today in the Mill District actually started out probably 7 or 8 years ago, and there are a couple of people here that I'm going to introduce to you later who are on our board who will obviously, mostly Ken Henson, who will stand up if I'm saying something wrong. I've asked him, please don't correct me if I say anything wrong, but about 7 years ago, we started with a city village concept. And City Village, if you are looking now, you're looking out at 2nd Avenue. And City Village is the area between what was formerly known as Johnson Mill Loft all the way down to Tesis on this side, on the river side of 2nd Avenue. We started out with working with the city. We got an RFP for a plan. We got a firm out of Miami that had done a lot of work with the city before. We got a beautiful plan that was frankly undoable in Columbus at that time. Some of you in this room worked on that plan with us. The one thing that I think we did right about that plan was that we got hundreds of citizens, agencies, and organizations and their input. Over about a year and a half, 18-month period, I think we almost met with every resident of City Village, and every agency and organization that ever was in City Village. But the reality was that the plan was just not workable from a development viewpoint at that time. So the delay actually allowed those of us who were involved to sort of take a moment and think about what we really wanted to do and where we were going. I should say right now, I'm actually subbing for Justin Krieg, who is one of the employees of Historic Columbus and is also the part-time halftime director, and has always been with us from day one on the original City Village, and now on the Mill District Plan. I don't do nearly as good a job as Justin. You've already heard his name mentioned a couple of times. Justin is our ruler and our kingdom maker, and the person who is connected and knows everything that the rest of us know a little bit about. So he's been a great inspiration to us and serves as president now of our board. The delay caused us to really be able to look at a more holistic approach for the whole neighborhood. And I remember in the very beginning, Richard Bishop had come to one of our planning and sort of input meetings, and he said, "You'll never be successful unless you look at the surrounding neighborhood. You have got to go across 2nd Avenue and look at 2nd Avenue and incorporate them." Wise words then and now. And that's what we did. We then incorporated it to be 4 neighborhoods, which I'm going to talk a little bit about more later, but so that you could orient. So City Village is this way, and none of you have, I doubt any of you had ever, other than Ben Link, had ever been into City Village. You didn't know about it. There was nothing. It's sort of the neighborhood behind all the social agencies. Nobody ever thinks there are people who live back here and that there's a neighborhood back there. It's not high, it's not very dense, but it is populated. Then we have across the street, we have North Highland, which many of you do know about, and is some of the most economically deprived neighborhoods in our community. And then north of North Highland, around Fox Elementary School, is what we call Anderson Village. Some of you might not know that, but it was a thriving mill district at one time, as each one of these neighborhoods were around a mill. And then, of course, across here, and from here up to 54th, we have what used to be called Bibb City, in which we, the residents of Bibb City, of which I am one, we now call the Bibb, or Bibb Village. And that's not an official name designation. It's just what those of us who live in this neighborhood call. And we would like to say welcome to our newest resident, Ben and Allie Link, who are building a home. And I know you're going to see the new houses that are being built, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in the Bibb. The geographic area that I've just described is about 750 acres and is made up of those 4 neighborhoods. The Bibb is easily the most forward at this point. We've got new construction. It contains, obviously, the Bibb Mill Event Center. We have a little bit of retail at the front facing 2nd Avenue. We've got certainly, and this is sort of not normal for neighborhoods where the north part of town is not the best, but the North Bibb still needs a lot of help. And I got to say a big shout out to Vince Allen and the folks at the Bridge Church, who have done a marvelous job in cleaning up around the Bibb, the Bridge Church, which is that large church that you see right before you hit the J.R. Allen bypass. City Village has City Mills, which is being renovated and going to be a great game changer in that, and you'll hear a little bit more about what we're doing there. And then North Highland, across the street, has some great neighborhoods and some very vital citizens, but not a whole lot of organization, as does Anderson Village. The most organization that we see in Anderson Village area is through Fox Elementary School. The naming of the Mill District was not a rebranding, as much as I love a good rebranding, marketing, PR. Naming it the Mill District was not a rebranding. It was a builder of this neighborhood as a community, which was never seen as a community of 4 neighborhoods, much like Uptown, Midtown, but obviously much smaller. So what you're looking at on the map here is from here, River, all the way north to just about Veterans Parkway. East to Veterans Parkway, and then up to 54th and down to Tesis. And I should say Tesis, too, has been an excellent partner in helping us. They're sort of the transition area before you get to Uptown, so they've been great. The common link is that each one of these neighborhoods was associated with a mill, hence the Mill District, or we could say the Mills District, but we call it the Mill District. Our board that you can see here is an extremely active and engaged group, and they have stuck with this project for many, many years. I'm going to read those out real quick. Leah Braxton, well, you can read them. There are educators, there are social service advocates, there are faith leaders, there are investors, all sorts of people who are really committed and want to make sure that this neighborhood, these neighborhoods, the Mill District, work for all of its citizens. About 2 years ago, we realized that as much as we wanted to go forward, we were going to need some help. And we started looking at other neighborhoods across the United States that had been helped through different organizations. And we came across literally purpose-built communities. Many of you have heard about purpose-built communities. It's an organization out of Atlanta. Tom Cousins, who is a large developer, national developer, decided that through a partnership with the police chief at the time, 25 years ago, the East Lake neighborhood was one of the most crime-infested, crime-ridden neighborhoods in all of Atlanta. It accounted for about 40% of the state's crimes, and incarcerated people came from East Lake neighborhood. Now, some of y'all may know East Lake most famously for its golf course, which is now, of course, a PGA golf course. But if you ever get a moment, and we've spent a lot of time in this neighborhood, the transformation has been amazing. They have now an elementary, middle school, and high school, Drew Charter, which was formerly a charter and is now a Atlanta Public Schools school. But Purpose-Built Communities was formed after they renovated and revitalized the East Lake neighborhood, and Tom Cousins formed Purpose-Built Communities to help other neighborhood developments across the United States. There are currently some 50-some-odd network partners, and this is not a thing that we pay them for. They come in and give us their expertise. They've done it a lot all the way across the nation, and so it's something that we were very glad a few months ago to finally receive our network affiliation with Purpose-Built Communities. Purpose-Built has 3 strategies that we already had some of in our plan for City Village, but that we were already working on, and that is housing, education, and wellness. And I'm going to talk a little bit about each one of those. The Mill District Board serves as the community quarterback or advocacy organization to influence in those areas of what we call investment. This next slide is something most of you in this room already know. It shows the population at or below the poverty line, over 20% in Columbus. And that the average median household in Columbus is 43,000. The Mill District neighborhoods, collectively, all of them together, are about 5,000 people, average household income of $19,000, and 46% live at or below the poverty line. That's a huge disparity, not only with our city, but with our state and with the nation. That is an unnatural sort of delineation of poverty and what it can do to neighborhoods and families and people. And overall, we're very committed to improving those numbers, and we've sort of found some success through targeted investments in affordable housing, or as those of you who were on the intercity visit, our new word, attainable housing, which means that you can afford housing, you just have to have housing that is more affordable to you. Early childhood education and community wellness. One of our primary partners within the neighborhood affordable housing, attainable housing, has been NeighborWorks Columbus. Kathy Williams serves on our board, and NeighborWorks has made a significant investment in this area, about $750,000 in property acquisition and demolition, focused on the 4th Avenue area behind Mercy Med. Currently, NeighborWorks is building a 108-unit affordable senior housing on the old Meritus Mill site called Highland Terrace. which will be a wonderful addition and stabilizer to that neighborhood. New for NeighborWorks in a certain area is that they are also doing a lot of single home family renovations in the Anderson Village area, which is sort of the area behind the golf course and behind across from Fox Elementary. Stability in housing is a critical aspect of the Mill District Plan and how we intend to go about stabilizing all 4 neighborhoods. The next partner that we have is the Housing Authority of Columbus, which has been a tremendous partner as well, as every single organization has been. But in these 4 neighborhoods, there are 2 housing projects. And those developments include Chase, which are the ones you see when you're coming up 2nd Avenue right next to TSIS, right next to Offley, the substation, and the rail line. Why we ever built public housing for families and children next to an electrical substation, next to a railroad, I'm pretty clueless on that, but it was a long time ago. Right now, if you've ever been on 1st Avenue, and I should say, I drive 1st Avenue to work. I work in Uptown, live right up here just a block away. I drive 1st Avenue twice a day. I go home that way, and I go to work that way, and I come back that way, just so that I'm reminded every day of what we're facing in this neighborhood development. Chase Homes is actually 4 city blocks that are sort of divided up by 1st Avenue, and they face 2nd. 2 of the blocks face 2nd Avenue. 2 of the blocks are on the river. Again, great developmental property insofar as it's a beautiful oversight of the river. So it's nice property that is there, especially a property that's a little bit further away from the electrical substation and the railroad. Wilson Homes is more toward that way, toward Veterans, sort of behind Fox Elementary School as you're getting more towards Veterans, and which you might see when you're coming down Veterans from Uptown to North Columbus. Wilson Homes is about 220 apartments, and those have been recently renovated. They are most of those kids, almost all of those kids if they go to elementary school, they go to Fox Elementary School, which is the only school located in this district. And Wilson Homes has undergone a nice renovation. What is still to happen will be the Chase Home renovation. It will probably go on the northernmost 2 blocks, and will be a wholesale demolition. They will tear them down and rebuild them. There are about 120 homes there now. They will probably not be that many, but they will be true mixed income housing. And when I say mixed income, I mean a la Columbus Commons, Ashley Station, those kinds of things that HACG, the Housing Authority, has already been doing in our community and working tremendously well. I'm going to ask y'all a question now. How many of you live in a mixed neighborhood? Gosh, I thought most of you would raise your hand saying, oh yes, I live in a mixed neighborhood, because it almost seems sometimes that it's like a little embarrassing if you don't live in a mixed neighborhood now. But when we say a mixed neighborhood, what we mean is mixed income. And very few of us truly live in a mixed income. We don't live next door to someone who makes $19,000 a year. And when you think about that with a family of 2, that makes a huge difference. And if we can stabilize the housing, if we can stabilize all those other things that make families work and neighborhoods work, then you'll see a huge difference in that. The Chase Home properties will be probably, you've already seen, if you ever go on 1st Avenue, you've seen the signs. They will probably be a little more high-rise than we originally envisioned, but those people will be moved out and placed in other places, and then if they so choose, just like it happened with Columbus Commons, which is the old BTW, will be moved back into that along with other affordable, attainable, mixed income housing. We've seen a lot of really successful mixed income housing, and I would encourage you to if you ever get the opportunity, to really look at Eastlake in Atlanta, because it's incredible, as we've seen on many times on the inner city visits. You can't tell which is the affordable housing, which is next door to the more than affordable housing. The second piece of our sort of triumvirate is the cradle to college education pipeline. And another partner has been for us the Muskogee County School District and Fox Elementary. I'm not sure if Yvette Scarborough is here. Dr. Yvette Scarborough is the principal of Fox Elementary and has been a tremendous addition serving on our board. They realized very early on in Eastlake that you were going to have the opportunity to make a huge impact, specifically in early childhood education, but we really will eventually focus on early childhood education up to college level or career school or anything else that the community needs, although it's not located in this neighborhood. We now have a formal MOU with the school district, and the school board and Dr. Lewis have been extremely helpful in working with us through this with this new working relationship. It's a very different partnership than anything else in our school system, our city. The Mill District provides additional funding to Fox Elementary. That includes an assistant principal, a social worker, a K-2 instructional coach, and a parent involvement specialist. And again, we're looking at a holistic approach to that neighborhood and what we can do, especially with early intervention. There's work about now, our sort of next priority. That means we're funding this for 5 years. We're funding those positions, and we expect that Fox Elementary will react very well in that neighborhood with this stability. The next thing that we're looking at is providing more of we thought we were going to get it done last year with Head Start, with an early Head Start, but we're not able to do that, and are looking now at other ways that we can impact early childhood education, specifically 0 to 3. The other partner in the education area is Truth Springs Academy, which many of you might know is a faith-based private school, very small, and they focus on the challenging students in this neighborhood, specifically around Fox. They have very small class sizes, and they sort of focus on individual instruction. Currently, they have K through 4 instruction and hoping to add on more. The third triumvirate is wellness, and that community wellness sort of impacts everything from wellness to healthcare to jobs, education, et cetera. I mean, it's a large piece, but encompasses things like making sure that these 4 neighborhoods have great access to the Riverwalk sidewalks, but there are many places in this neighborhood that do not have sidewalks and there's not a big playground in this area that's not delineated for a specific population. We've worked with 2 partners in the wellness area, and that's Mercy Med, who you're going to hear from Grant later, and Billy Holbrook has been a wonderful partner in on our board and bringing to us, as many of you may know, Mercy Med already partners with Fox Elementary. They have a clinic in their school, which has been tremendously successful. The clinic is not only for the students, it's for the teachers and the staff as well, which has been a great addition, and that's been all Mercy Med. Although we've worked with all of the social agencies, mostly in the City Village area, probably the most involved with the Mill District has been Open Door, which offers a variety of wellness programs, educational programs, after-school programs, job mentoring, job fairs, et cetera. And so Kim Jenkins has been a great addition as well. And we were very deliberate in the beginning to get information and involvement from all the social agencies that sort of line up on 2nd Avenue, because we wanted to reassure them that we were not looking for them to go someplace else. We were looking for them to continue to do what they do and for us to maximize those resources and help us. So, I mean, other than the fact that I live in the Bibb, and there are several of us who live in neighborhoods around here who are on our board, but why is this important? I mean, we all know Uptown, Midtown, boy, they're the economic engines for our city. Neighborhoods have, huge organizational resources, and North Columbus is doing just fine. So why would we care about working with these neighborhoods? The Bibb, as I said, is doing great. It's going to move ahead. It's going to be some funky little housing for folks. We've lived here for 11 years. We were the first new house built in the Bibb in 50 some odd years. And now we've got 3 new houses, 1 under construction and 2 houses that are sold. Wade and Elizabeth Clyott live in one of the brand new homes, and a doctor and a librarian from Fort Benning. The doctor is at Martin Army and is a soldier, bought the second house. And Johnny Cargill, who's developing all of River Avenue, which is this avenue that faces the river, pretty convenient, have been tremendous. I mean, have already been sold, all the other lots. I think he has a few that are still now facing First Avenues or Poplar Street. So if you want any of those, let Johnny Cargill know. He's been a great developer. But we know that with poverty affects all of us. When people don't have stable homes, kids in my neighborhood who don't have stable homes, who don't have a stable home life, our future taxpayers, our future tax base, our future citizens, our future community folks, if we don't do this work and do this work well, then we will never, ever make anything of Columbus. I thank you for the time, and I'll be glad to take any questions that anybody might have.
Any questions?
Surely somebody's got a question. Ben? And I'm going to call on you. Oh, and I should have said in the very beginning, Seth Brown has been absolutely fabulous in helping us. Isaiah, to your point, we do this. In the Bibb, first Saturday in the Bibb, we have cleanup. We all get together at somebody's house, usually Anna and Keith Sims, who is our community farmer and works with Mercy Med, and we get together on the first Saturday of every month and clean up our neighborhood. So.
Well, I was going to ask you, Marquette, as we struggle with this throughout the city of trying to create, because I always use you and your group as an example. Waverly Terrace has been very successful in some of a lot of same aspects that y'all have. But, and I know the answer to this, but I think everybody else needs to know, how did y'all make it work so well in the Bibb, and how can we duplicate that throughout the city to have that same kind of environment that you have in the Bibb?
Well, that's a good question. And I should say, too, we were the first ones to build in the Bibb in 50 some odd years, but we were not the pioneers in the Bibb. Annie Santiago, Brad Barnes, and Jen Collins, Barry Carswell, there were several folks who live in the Bibb, have lived in the Bibb for 20 years, and made a lot of progress there. I guess it was partly my organizational and PR facility that we were just bringing everybody together. And it was a matter of we wanted to see in the Bibb, we wanted to see our neighborhood succeed. And it also became, I will say, I think a big part of it is the social aspect, is getting neighborhoods, people who live in the neighborhoods, putting that onus on them of rebuilding and helping build up their neighborhoods. So, does that answer?
Yeah, and I think the big excuse that we always hear in a lot of the neighborhoods that are impoverished is the reason we can't do this is we have a high rent population. And the Bibb is a very high rent population, and y'all made it work. And of course now some of that cycle's turning around a little bit in the Bibb, like you said, the new development with Johnny and some other stuff. But using y'all as an example, we always tell homeowners, just because you rent doesn't mean you shouldn't take pride in where you live and where your children grow up and those kind of things. So we're trying to get the, like y'all did, y'all brought the property owners into the solution.
That's what I was about to say. We were very deliberate about going house to house and saying, y'all come to the neighborhood meeting. But we were also saying, we were calling the owners of the homes and saying, you have a responsibility and you'll get rents up if you come in and renovate your houses and make them better living conditions for your property, for your residents, for your renters. So that was a huge part of it, was getting the owners involved. And I will say this right now too. The city could not have been better in every aspect of this. I mean, we consider ourselves BFFs with everybody in the city, for all the Mill District, for everything that they've done and will continue to do, not just in the Bibb, but in the entire Mill District.
I'm only up here because you kind of called me out a few times.
So why'd you decide to build
So,
in
yeah,
this neighborhood?
Why I'm here today, why I'm building right up across the street, why I'm back in Columbus, has a lot to do with what we're trying to do to enhance what's already here, and to bring care to this town that probably we haven't seen in a long time. You know, we're obsessed with the metrics. We want to see certain things, but something about this place really inspires me, and that's why I'm here to kind of play a part and to not so much sit back and be an armchair analyst and complain. That didn't do anything. So kind of to what he was asking, how do you get people together to start making these positive changes? This co-creation process, how does it start? It happens organically, but you just have to be brave. You can't live in fear. You got to get out there and you got to talk with your heart, not with the mind, but with the heart. And be afraid to be a little different, because we're all different. We project this sameness out in the world, like, oh yeah, I'm like you, we're in this crew, but we're all fantastically weird in Columbus, Georgia, and whether in public or private, and let's embrace that. That's our character. So part of that is just getting out there and speaking, not just your mind, but speaking from here, from your gut, and quieting yourself to the point where you listen to each other. So that's the beginning stages of change, is not so much imposing your ideas out into the world, but kicking back, listening, gauging the feedback, and then responding and not reacting. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you. Thank y'all very much for having me.
Moving right along here, I, like you, watch a lot of TV, or have in my lifetime. And the thing that strikes me in my head is the fact about there's always that one doctor show that shows up, you know, where the kindly old doctor goes in and he takes care of people and this and that. And you look at it and you go, well, that's nice, but that's not reality. Well, let me dispel that for you right now. I want to invite Dr. Grant Scarborough to come forward here. He is with Mercy Med, and the one thing I want to pick out of his little saying here, little blurb is, as a board-certified pediatrician and internal medicine physician, Grant desired to see God glorified through caring for the poor. I don't know that Grant remembers this or not, but he came to our Kiwanis Club, which you're all invited to, by the way. Thought I'd get that cheap plug in. And he came, and I was mystified by the fact that here was a man that had the medical degrees and so forth, and who probably could be in any major hospital, I would think. But yet he came back to the community to give back to the community and to the citizens that he wants to serve. So with that in mind, please welcome Dr. Grant Scarborough to the mic.
In case I get tired. Thank you for saying old. Made me feel a lot better. Thank y'all for letting me be here, but thank you also because I'm truly just an extension of Mercy Med, for letting Mercy Med be here. And I'm excited just to give you a few quick thoughts on where they said was the good, the bad, and the ugly. The ugly standing before you. But before I get into the talk, I just want to tell you a little bit about my story. I'm from Columbus, Georgia, was raised here, and I've had a long history of just loving the city of Columbus. My relative, Howard Mott, started the Valley Rescue Mission. When I was in high school, I used to go down to the House of Mercy and volunteer. When I was a kid, we used to get names from the Valley Rescue Mission and take presents to children that didn't have much. I'm a member of the Open Door Board now. I would tell you I've loved Columbus, and I've loved being a part of caring for the poor, even though I've been gone for extension since the 1980s. So this is really an honor for me to come back and just share some of that with y'all. I went to college at University of Georgia. Probably too soon to even say those words. Sorry for my fans. After that, I went to Atlanta and was involved in a ministry where I started caring for some of the poor in Atlanta. While there, I noticed a lot of individuals had people caring for their food, their housing, their clothing. Very few were caring for medical issues among the poor. Proverbs says, in abundance of counselors, there's victory. And so I started talking to people about this idea, and they encouraged me to go to med school as a way to care for the poor through the gift of medicine. So I went to med school at Mercer University in Macon, which I'm very excited is coming to Columbus soon. And then went and did my training in Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis was one of the poorest counties in the United States of America, and they had a couple of clinics there doing exactly what I wanted to do, which was to care for the underserved. And so I went to do my training there, but also just to get a peek at some of these clinics and see, can I copy something like this? After that, I moved to I moved to Augusta, Georgia with a friend of mine. In 2007, started a clinic called Christ Community Health Services of Augusta. It was done with a friend of mine, Robert Campbell. It is still going and still serving the underserved of Augusta, Georgia. In 2010, we had a few folks come from Columbus. Hal Brady, Champ Baker, Lynn Sexton, my father, and a few others came from Columbus to Augusta to see what we were doing there. And when they saw that, they said, would you ever consider coming back to Columbus? And after much prayer and deliberation, I decided in 2011 to move back to Columbus and start a clinic like what I was doing in Augusta, like we copied from Memphis, Tennessee. When I first got here, I did a scouting trip, and I went down to South Columbus, and I rode for hours all the way through. It's a great thing to do if you hadn't done it in a long time. In South Columbus, I saw Valley Healthcare doing great work caring for the poor in that community. As I drove farther north, I saw on Buena Vista Road, there's a Columbus Baptist Association that had a clinic there. And I went farther north, I hit the 2nd Avenue area with all the homeless shelters, with Highlands going from North Highlands over to East Highlands, and realized that there was a great need there to care for our friends that are poor, and there was no medical work being done at that time. So in 2012, we opened the doors to Mercy Med of Columbus in the old CB&T Bank. The best way to describe Mercy Med is our mission. We exist to proclaim Jesus Christ as Lord and demonstrate His love by providing affordable, quality health care to the physical, emotional, spiritual needs of the underserved. It's a Christian nonprofit. We exist to proclaim Jesus as Lord and to demonstrate His love. What does that mean? Scripture says when Jesus showed the full extent of His love, He took off His outer garments, wrapped a towel around Himself, and washed His disciples' feet. I cannot tell you how many homeless folks I've seen come in, take off their socks, and see feet that have not been washed for a long time. I call this a service ministry. The way we do it is by serving the folks that come in that we see. We exist to proclaim Jesus Christ as Lord, demonstrate His love by providing affordable, quality health care. It's not free health care. We think it's important that people invest in their health care. Most folks pay $30 to get seen, and that includes their blood work. It's my job to know where to send all the medicines to make sure they're the cheapest in town. So it's very affordable. It's also quality. We see everybody that walks through that door, no matter where they came from, if made is in the image of God. And because of that, they deserve the very best health care in the city. And that's our goal, is to give them the very, very best. To the physical, emotional, spiritual needs. And as you talk more about poverty in a few minutes, you'll see how we have to look at people in all those areas to really care for their soul. Our vision statement's a little bit bigger, but just to sum it up, I would say that we envision a clinic that's just not a clinic. We envision a clinic that affects the community around us, and that we hope to see the community look different in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years, in 20 years. It's a community development vision statement. That's why you'll see that we're in Fox School, caring for the children a couple blocks right behind us. That's why we started a telemedicine program to a couple shelters in town. Now, that's not going anymore. We have to do some adjustments, but we want to care for some of our homeless individuals. That's why we've done some community events. That's why we've started farming in the neighborhood and started a farmer's market so that our folks in the community can come and try to get healthier food options. And that's why we've been involved in many of these discussions about community development as well. When we talk about community development, I think sometimes for me it's important to define what I mean, because sometimes I think we can use different words when we say community development. So I want you to know what my dream is for Highlands, okay? And simply put, my dream is not necessarily gentrification. I love the people that live behind my clinic. They are, 85% of them are wonderful people, and they want what I have, a neighborhood where I can go in a couple of weeks and knock on the door and say trick or treat. They want to be able to have a parade July 4th and end with a fire truck shooting water into the air and be able to run around and laugh. They want to be able to walk and exercise in that little area. That's what I desire to see with my little area behind Highlands. Let's be honest, 15% of the people back there are some troublemakers, there's some addicts, there's some drugs. They do need to be run off. But that most of the folks are just trying to find a safe place to live, and we want to bring that up for them. We want them to be able to enjoy the benefit of a healthy neighborhood, that they experience living in peace and shalom. That's the desire for the folks that right behind my community. Before I get into what I feel like are the good, bad, and ugly around our clinic, there's a word of warning, a caution, it might be a better word that I will give you. And that's, we need to be better listeners. We need to understand that a lot of folks that maybe live behind my clinic might have different cultural values than maybe what I have. I took my daughters to Uganda not too long ago, and before we went, we had a cultural training. They do things in Uganda that are a little different than they do here in the States. And if it happens, don't let it surprise you. There's just some differences. And for me, when I go behind my clinic into those streets, I've learned the best thing I can do is listen. Sometimes what I think is best, they don't view it the same way. And it's important with community development that we respect each other, that we care for each other, and that we listen to hear what is important to them as well. So I have a lot of great ideas, but I would beg you, don't just hear me. We need to hear our friends as well. The good, that's simple. Columbus, Georgia. I've been in a lot of cities, and the very few cities I've seen that loves its city as much as we do. We love Columbus. We love Columbus. Just look around. Look at downtown. Look at the Riverwalk. Look at the river. I mean, we invest in Columbus. It is the greatest good. It's our greatest asset, are people right out here and beyond these walls. We have an advantage over every other city. 2, dreamers. You've heard Marquette. You've heard other folks. We love to dream for good for the city. It's not that we just want to do good, but we want to be creative and come up with ways to help folks. And we won't spend hours on projects. I've been to Purpose Built. You ought to go. It's incredible. We need to dream even bigger dreams, but we have dreamers here who want to see things come to reality. And one thing that we want to see come to reality is a better and more shalom neighborhood. Cooperation. I love being in the city. We've worked with Fox, we've worked with Safe Home, we've worked with Open Doors, we've worked with Teen Challenge, And every time we get together, it's kind of the spirit like, okay, you take this one. It's okay. You can get the credit. You take this one. The reality is we have some great ministries here willing to let the good be good, and their name doesn't have to be on it. And when you're trying to do something for the community, you need partners willing to say, okay, you go with this one. You go with this one. And I think we have a wonderful cooperation. Good resources. In this community, we've got some great resources. We have a golf course. That's pretty awesome. Studies show that the number one way to get people out of poverty is a college education. Okay? The easiest scholarship for a girl to get to go to college is a golf scholarship. We need a golf coach. I mean, Fox ought to have the best golf team in the city. We have the river. We have a high traffic area, 2nd Avenue, which will lend well to businesses and investors. And we have lots of available real estate that is just waiting to be bought. From a healthcare perspective, we started, as you know, a clinic. We provide another access point for folks who need healthcare to get healthcare. We have grown. We have 6 providers seeing patients. We have counseling. We have addiction counseling. We have mental health support groups. We have dentistry now. This week and a half ago, we started physical therapy for our patients. We have cardiology, orthopedics, GYN, psychiatry, ophthalmology, some radiological services. So from a healthcare perspective at Mercy Med, we're able to see a patient and not just do primary care, provide a lot of wraparound services as well. It's a great way to keep folks running off to the ER. And lastly, we have good neighbors already living here. I don't know as much about the Bibb side, but on the Highland side, we've had some folks move into the community. And whenever someone moves in the neighborhood and becomes a neighbor, it lifts the whole neighborhood a little bit. When we keep our house a little cleaner, when we fix meals and invite folks for dinner, that we have folks starting to move in the neighborhoods and make a difference. There's more good, but I only have a certain amount of time, so I better hop over to the bad. I'd rather stay on the good. But there are a couple of things that are bad that I think we need to talk about a little bit. One is mental illness. This is huge. Statistics show that over 50% of our homeless have a mental illness. I would argue it's got to be much more than that. You put me in a tent down by the river for 2 weeks, I'm going to have a mental illness. It's a big, big issue. I talked to Bob Lupton once about this, who's in Atlanta, does community development in Atlanta. I said, what do I do with all our homeless that have mental illness? And in all his wisdom, he said, I have no idea. He goes, years ago, we had a state hospital for the mentally ill, and that was shut down. And they all thought the cities would pick up and go from there. And none of the cities ever picked up. And a lot of this homeless right around the corner is from the mentally ill. And we don't realize it at the time. A quick story, some of our female providers live in the Highlands area, trying to make a difference, being little missionaries in the community. And one time at 2 o'clock in the morning, someone starts banging on the door and trying to bust through the window. You can imagine the fear that they might have. They call the pastor who lives 2 doors down. He comes running down, and it was one of my patients who has paranoid schizophrenia, who we've been trying to help and stabilize. He thought someone was trying to kill him, and he was running for his life. He wasn't intentionally trying to do anything bad. He was just unstable. And thankfully, he knocked on our house, not mine, but our provider's house, because if it had not been the case, he would have been shot, killed, or something else would have happened. Mental illness is one of the bad that we have to work with. Addiction. This ranges from pills to illicit drugs. People ask me if I'm afraid in the neighborhood, and the answer is no, except for 2 sets of people. One's the mentally ill, and the other are those with addiction. It's tough. Addiction leads to other issues. The prostitution that goes on behind our clinic, they're not paid in cash. These ladies are actually paid in crack or meth. It's addiction driven. I asked a patient one time, he was giving a talk, we were having a talk, some folks in talking about community development, and I brought one of my friends who live in the community, and I said, if someone asked for $5, would you give it to them? And he said, hell no. All they're going to do is buy drugs. And I'll tell you what else my friends do, is that they will go in those little boxes we put stuff in late at night for donations. They'll crawl in, pull stuff out, sell it the next day at a yard sale, and then buy drugs. Addiction is a bad that needs to be dealt with. Lack of hope for those within the community. So many of my friends have lost hope. They feel lonely. They've lost their dignity. They feel like they've lost every opportunity. I've got to tell you, for someone to make it out of Highlands and make it even just almost even to middle class is by far much greater than anything I've ever done. The obstacles they have to overcome is amazing. In Fox School, 1/4 of the students are new every year, which means every year 25% of the kids are moving to someplace else. They live on couches. You know, they go from house to house. There's some parents who won't let their children study. They've lost hope. They can't see a better tomorrow. It's important for us as we start doing community development not to offer anything that we can't provide. We don't need to be another lost voice that promises something and doesn't deliver. We must be careful. Our friends are fragile. We must love them well. Resources. I've said we had a lot of resources. True, but we also don't have a lot of resources. There's a saying, you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. Teach him to fish, eats for a lifetime. There's one book I read says, but what happens when there's no more fish left in the lake? We have a little bit of a resourceless neighborhood in the Highlands region. There's not a lot of fish left in the lake. And that's an issue. We want our friends to rise up. We want them to grab opportunity. But sometimes there's no place to grab. And part of our job is to provide things that they can hold on to and they can move up. We had a friend that was given help with a job through Subway. It was great. However, her child care was not reliable enough for her to show up, and then she lost her job. It wasn't because she wasn't a good worker, but she didn't have the stability, the safety net to make it to work. One thing Marquette mentioned was an early childhood learning center. Man, that would be huge for some of our friends. Huge. From a healthcare perspective, we need more providers. 20% of the folks in this community live at the poverty line, and about 20% of the folks have no health insurance. There is a large need, and we just need more boots on the ground to care for them. We also need, for us, we really need a social worker as well to help some of these social issues. And those are two areas I see from a healthcare perspective that we can grow. The ugly, I don't want to do ugly. I prefer bad, so I was going to skip this. People are not ugly. But buildings, houses, yards, visually, we can use a little makeover. Come right behind my clinic. I feel like every fourth house has all of their furniture out by the street. It probably wasn't their choice. But visually, I think we could do a little bit better. And what else is ugly is simply poverty. Poverty is a cruel taskmaster. It is a equal opportunity employer. It doesn't care about your race, your sex, your nationality. It keeps you down and keeps you down. It is hard. Go home, do this. I did this one time. And figure out what it costs to live on the poverty line for your family. And then figure out what you have to cut. I realized I had to get rid of my car. So one day I decided to take the bus to work. 3.7 miles. It took me 55 minutes to get to work and 1 hour and 10 minutes to get home. Some of our friends live that way every day. Every day. Poverty robs you of hope and steals your dignity. The good, the bad, the ugly and I would say the opportunity. And this is what I would leave you with. Leave you with makes me think I'm about to finish. Oh, I am about to finish. 10 minutes. Okay. The sign in the back. The opportunity. A couple of areas that I see this. For me personally, the things that jump out as a medical provider, one is addiction. I've talked to some friends that are in the addiction recovery business, and the thing that they feel like we really need is more acute addiction rehab. 7 to 10 days to get folks off the medicine. We have wonderful things at Valley Rescue, at Teen Challenge, the Safe House, where once they're out of the acute rehab, they can go for another year. I have a friend who actually wants to start a house to kind of do after the year program, to do a re-entry program into the society, because that's needed as well. But the one area I see that I need to take advantage, not advantage is the wrong word, that I need to look at to see if I can help is how do I fill that void? It's a big void. A lot of folks want to get off drugs, and if you don't take advantage of it at that moment, the moment's gone. It's gone. It's too powerful. It's too powerful. Mental illness. This is a tough one as well. There's huge trust issues with individuals with mental illness. For them to walk across the street from maybe the river to 2nd Avenue to our clinic, it's very difficult often for them. But the reality is that we need more mental illness in our clinic. We need a psychiatrist. We need a psychiatrist bent with an addiction psychiatry so they can do both of these. And knowing some of the trust issues, we need a psychiatrist that likes to travel. That they need to step up and set up shop, maybe at Open Door one day, maybe at House of Mercy, maybe Salvation Army, where some of our friends go when they're in need. There's talk about Early Children Learning Center. I just think it would be game-changing. To get kids from months old and get them prepped to go to Fox School and then get them through Fox School ahead of the curve. Children are our future. We need to invest in them. We need to invest in adults too, but children are our future. I've already mentioned, but we have lots of real estate. I'd love for you to come and buy some. We can help you get great deals. But we need to do this in a way that's equitable to our friends. I don't want to create a place where prices go up so high that my friends have to move. So there are ways that even Purpose Built talked about this, is of buying some property maybe early. And let's hold them for our friends so they can continue to stay there, continue to live there. A great way for some of my friends to get out of poverty is actually equity in a home. And assist them actually having home ownership. It's a great thing to think of. We also have businesses here, commercial real estate, that could be wonderful places that we could start jobs, because we need job training, but we need job creation to put people to work. Work can build dignity and hope again. I'll skip that part and get to the end. In conclusion, the bad and ugly, there is bad and ugly. But there's also very good. And that gives me much hope when I look out at a crowd like this. That yes, things can change. I would tell you that probably 8 or 10 folks, maybe probably more than that, but really boots on the ground, working hard in this neighborhood. I mean, if all y'all came and joined us, man, I could not imagine what it would look like. Our focus needs to be on raising up the poor and making the city better. These things are not exclusive. They can be inclusive. We can do both. We can raise people and the city up together, but it'll take a city to accomplish it. It'll take the churches, the government, the leaders, the nonprofits, people to sacrifice. Because I think in 20, 30 years, when we look back and see communities living at peace with one another, knowing that we're all God's children and living in shalom, we'll look back and go, job well done. But the job has to start right here. And it has to start with us because it's our time to step up and make a difference. And I'll take questions.
Sir, thank you very much. That was an excellent presentation. I've learned more about Mercy Med than I knew, and thank you so much for everything that you're doing. My question is, are you working with any organizations to help Hispanics? The Hispanics have the same problems that you're mentioning that they have in other neighborhoods. But what organizations are you working with? Have you thought about the need for that? The Hispanic population is growing in Columbus. They're not as poor as some people because they do a lot of work that we need people to work for. But I just don't see enough people, enough organizations reaching out to help them. The Sheriff's Office started the Hispanic Outreach Committee 14 years ago. Major Randy Robertson worked for the Sheriff's Office, now Senator Randy Robertson. He inspired it. And the main reason was to help Hispanics not fear reporting crime, okay? To help them to report abuse, to have a better relationship with city officials and with law enforcement. The committee's been around for 14 years. There are 70 different organizations in town that have come to our monthly meetings. We'll have anywhere from 25 to 45 people at every monthly meeting. So there are a lot of people that have an interest in helping people. But there are a lot of people that are so busy they don't have time to really do what they need to do. So if you could answer that question, how could we better as a community help everybody? And how can you as Mercy Med? I'm familiar with what they do down at Valley Health, and I'm familiar with some organizations that are very involved. But we need to get more people involved in helping everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. You're absolutely right. We need to try to help everybody in the city that needs help. We do have a Spanish translator at our clinic, and she's done a great job recruiting patients that need to be seen. I know un poquito español. I know dolor, which means pain. I point a lot of different places really fast. But when she's there, she helps. Our Spanish population has been growing. The word has gotten out that we see patients. I saw one this morning before coming here that actually broke her arm, and because of, I think, some issues with translation, she wasn't sure what to do with follow-up, and so I actually saw her this morning and gave her some guidance as well. So we have a Spanish translator. The reality is we need growth in all our areas. We need to be more Hispanic patients, more African-American patients, more white patients. The need is very, very great, and we need more providers. We need more providers to see more patients.
You need a translator. My card, call any time of day or night.
Great, thank you.
Can you talk more about the farm and the farmers market and the impact it's had on the community?
Thank you. That was on my list, but I skipped it for some unknown reason, not intentionally. We have a farm that we do now. We have a person who is actually a great farmer, and he loves vegetables. He loves to talk about vegetables. You come see him, he'll talk about vegetables all the time. But we are growing vegetables right in our backyard, and then we are selling it to our patients. One of our goals one day is to have a food pharmacy. You come see us, you have diabetes, you go out back, see Keith, he's got your bag of groceries ready to go home with you. We've won a grant, which has been wonderful. So if you show up with food stamps, you get twice the value of your food stamps. So for $10 worth of food stamps, you get $20 worth of vegetables. And the grant will pay the farmer the other $10. So the farmer gets his money, and their friends get their vegetables at a reduced rate. We've having our last one tomorrow from 4 to 6 for the year because the growing season slowed down. So if you will come out tomorrow from 4 to 6, we'd love for you to buy some vegetables. And so it's been a great way to really encourage our patients to eat better. Our next goal is to start including exercise and trying to figure out how we can actually start getting our patients to exercise. Most of the problems I see, to be honest, can be fixed if we just ate a little better and exercised a little more. And so we want to provide that for our friends. So I was going to say one more thing about vegetables, but I forgot what it was. But I see the stop sign, so I think we're good. Well, thank y'all. It's good to be here.
Highlight some of the key points of the emerging themes that are in this area and touch on the good, bad, and ugly, hearing all the themes. But as we think about things that we've heard, particularly in the last couple of talks, poverty, housing, healthcare, education, all of this comes together in the Health and Human Services delivery. And it just, I want you to, hope you'll be inspired, informed, and learn some things, and maybe think about, as we've talked about with other presenters, how you can plug in to this area of work in our community. We all access health and human services in different ways, and we maybe want to touch on a way that some aspects of that you may not have thought about or don't interact with in every day. So I have a wonderful panel behind me today, so I'm going to get out of their way. Let's see. Come down here, and I'm going to ask Margelina if you will introduce yourself, your organization, and we'll get started with the discussion.
Margelina Remington, Food Sourcing Manager at Feeding the Valley and past client of many of the programs that are in this room.
Hi, Susan Gallagher with New Horizons Behavioral Health. We're the public non-for-profit Tier 1 provider of DBHDD, mental health, substance abuse, and developmental disability services in 8 counties in West Central Georgia.
Good morning, Asante Hiltz, West Central Health District, here representing Columbus Health Department. Columbus Health Department is one of the 16 county health departments that we serve.
Hi, I'm Marcus McBride, Goodwill Industries of the Southern Rivers. We operate retail stores across 50 counties in Georgia and Alabama, as well as career centers and training centers to help people find employment.
And I'm Kim Jenkins, Executive Director at Open Door Community House here on 2nd Avenue. We're a multi-service organization working with persons living in poverty or experiencing homelessness.
Great. And I'm going to invite the panel members to take a seat. Let's get comfortable as we have the discussion this morning. Kim, since you still have your microphone, right? Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Talk about the impact between income, housing, and healthcare. I think that's a good way to kind of tie in some of this morning's earlier topics and get us kicked off with our discussion.
I'll be happy to. Thank you. May I stand? It's
Sure.
just easier
Go
for
for
me to talk standing because I talk with my hands, so I apologize for that. Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you all for the opportunity to be here. I want to certainly ditto everything that Grant was saying. We see all of those same issues with the persons that come in for services of any sort at Open Door, and we have found a lot of connections between housing stability, persons who are living in poverty, and the disconnect that often takes place there. So you can just imagine that if you are experiencing homelessness, for example, and you're living in a tent or an abandoned building, how difficult it is to access any sort of service. You certainly can imagine if you live in poverty and you are not making above a minimum wage, just how difficult it is to sustain housing. In fact, you cannot sustain housing on just a minimum wage anywhere in the country. You certainly can't do it in Columbus, Georgia. For minimum wage, you would actually have to work over 80 hours a week just to maintain a very modest 1-bedroom apartment or home. And so what we try to do at Open Door is really help people connect to the resources that are available to them. We've talked about the resources that are here in this community, and there are many. And so we usually talk about at Open Door helping people access the resources that are available to them. We surely do believe, and we've tried to practice this through the years, that we can continue to address symptoms of poverty, or we can really work at those things to help people move forward, beyond, and thrive. You've heard Dr. Grant talk about the access to a college education. Well, we like to talk about also accessing things that are skills building, that is education building, that helps you get to that place where you can have above minimum wage income so that you can sustain your housing, so that you can have access to other resources that are available to you, so that you can begin to thrive. Because without access to health care, which we have, you've heard him talk about, without access to sustainable housing that's affordable and adequate, and certainly without access to enough income in your home to survive, it's just impossible to do. Even a self-sufficiency wage is much higher than even a living wage. And that's something that we try to do at Open Door through the education programs and the skills building programs that we have, really helping people get to that place where they can at least get livable wage employment. But even with livable wage, you're still having to access outside resources, childcare assistance, for example. So a self-sufficiency wage, which is much, much, much higher than that, would actually get you to that place where you wouldn't need outside assistance, and that could be as high as $47 an hour. I don't know many people who make $47 an hour that haven't been through college or master's program or whatever that takes. So our neighbors, our friends who live around us, who come to Open Door for services, that's what we're trying to do, is connect to those opportunities where they can get at least livable wage for the household size that they reside in.
Great. Anyone else want to pick up on where Kim left off?
Hi, Susan Gallagher with New Horizons. It's very important when you talk about housing. About 12 years ago, New Horizons led the initiative in the state to look at stable and safe housing as one of the necessary elements for treatment, for mental health treatment or for addictive disease treatment. If you aren't safe and stably housed, if your case managers don't know how to find you, you're not going to get the services you need. So we have what's called a housing first model as far as our goal with treatment, especially when we do outreach to individuals experiencing homelessness. We want to get them housed first, and we look at housing as an element of treatment.
Great. Thank you.
And I'll add on to that with identifying some of the resources. Us as a health department, we are a resource for the community, but what we started to see, and this is a continuing trend, is that people don't necessarily always have the opportunity to come and access us. We're a clinic that operates from 8 to 5. Everyone can't fit in the parameters of those working hours, so we had to start thinking outside the box and how could we leverage our community partners. And one of those out-of-the-box ideas that we went with was our WIC on Wheels. So WIC is our Women Infant and Nutrition program. And when we started seeing a decline in people accessing that program, we identified a need, which is going to the people to find where they are as opposed to waiting for them to come into our clinic. So we have a mobile unit that you'll see in the community that's WIC on Wheels, and it goes out into communities to see if people want our services and how can we meet them where they are. So in addition to that effort that has been highly successful, we've now transitioned to move WIC on Wheels to Public Health on Wheels, because if people want those WIC services to come to them in the community, how can we expand that to all of our public health services, our immunizations, our chronic disease prevention, our health education, put all those services in the mobile unit and bring those into the community.
Thank you. Thank you. Marcus, turn the question over to you for just a moment. Thinking about if you could share kind of your perspective. Goodwill does a lot in terms of job training and workforce development. Can you talk about that in terms of some of the barriers that we might have heard about this morning, or barriers that you see within individuals who are coming to access services through Goodwill, and opportunities to help strengthen that support?
Sure. Well, as Grant was talking about right before the session here, we see that people struggle financially and have a lot of issues with mental health, with being stable and being able to gain employment to be self-sufficient. Those things aren't just isolated to one area of town. Economic development affects everybody. If you have a money problem, it creates a lot of more issues in your life. And the people that come into our centers looking for employment sometimes have had very little training, very little work experience, and have huge barriers because they haven't even seen someone in their house go to work. They've never had a working parent. Maybe they've never seen someone who's leaving their house going to a job every day. That's a huge barrier for someone who needs to find a job. You don't know where to start, how to look, how to fill out an application, how to sell yourself, how to interview. Those things are very pervasive across areas of town that have very little economic development and struggling models that continue to breed these vicious cycles of poverty. So coming to Goodwill in one of the training centers, you'll see that we start with the basics. We start with teaching people about soft skills. How do you sell yourself? How do you talk about being a great employee? How do you model that behavior? How do you actually be on time? How do you dress for success? How do you look like the role that you want to have in the company? So those are some very basic things that we start with training, but if the family model doesn't have it, you have to learn it from somewhere. And there's a lot of great places, as we see on this panel here, and those are the things that we start with in building up people for success.
And I'll just encourage any of the panel members to jump in. I may direct a question at one member, but I know each of you have a great perspective on the topics. So thank you for that, Marcus. Asante, Social determinants in terms of health is a term that we're hearing more of. And I've come to know you as an expert in that topic, one that you're very passionate about. Could you talk a little bit about what that means and how we can become more aware of that and use that in our everyday lives?
Absolutely. So I think everybody got the handout in front of you. That's our Muskogee County infographic that talks about our community health assessment. It's the colorful long page that you have. And that's an example of how we're looking to identify what are the social determinants of health affecting our Columbus area. What are the things that we don't look traditionally as impacting health? Because when we think health, you think health care. But public health encompasses all the models. It encompasses housing. How are people living? What environments are they in? Are children in homes that have lead, and are they being exposed to lead? How can we address that? Transportation. How are people accessing our services if they cannot get there? And what does that barrier look like? So all of those things, obesity, physical activity, food, lack of food. We heard from Dr. Scarborough earlier that they're having these community farms so that we can get produce in the hands of people who may not have access to it. So how do we look beyond just traditional healthcare, that traditional model, to all of those things that are going to impact people's accessibility to the services that we have for them?
Thank you. Any follow-up from the panel members? I'm going to transition. You touched on food, and you heard that earlier with Dr. Scarborough. Margelina, with the food bank, one of the things that we know is so true, thinking about the education panel from earlier today, it's very difficult for a child to focus on their school day if they're hungry. We see hunger throughout our community, higher among our children, just as it's difficult for children to be productive, pay attention at school. It's difficult for adults to work with that. Can you talk about food access and different ways perhaps that the food bank and other organizations are helping to meet that need?
Sure. We actually have just added 4 more counties to our area. So we now have 18 counties from Shroop all the way down to Albany, and we're finding more and more that the children and our seniors are sometimes overlooked. Also our working families, so we are getting ready pretty soon to open an after-hours food closet because, again, what she was talking about with the WIC Mobile, a lot of times the people cannot come to our facility during our business hours. So, and also we have backpack programs. We have all kind of different programs. I suggest that everyone in here check it out. There's something for everyone, whoever, because some people would rather have to help the kids or the seniors or whatever. There's nothing worse than having to wake up and be hungry and think about that all day long. And, you know, part of our goal at the food bank is, like, if there's a national disaster, the last thing we want somebody to think about when they've just lost everything they have is to be hungry, because their whole world has fallen apart, and we want to be able to help them with that. But also, we want to teach people to cook. Education is important. If we're going to help poverty and help these people, that's a huge part. We hope to start programs with the school-age kids and bring the parents in and allow them to do it together, because most of your children, they know how to pop something in the microwave. And today, even with a lot of the parents, when we hand out a bag of dry beans, they're like, what do I do with that? You put it in a crock pot, you put a little piece of meat in there, and you let it cook all day. But the thing is, a lot of people don't know that, so we have to find a way to be able to say that to them without making them feel little, because it's very easy to make them feel like they're not educated, and a lot of it is they just weren't taught any different.
Great, thank you. Margelina, you've touched on a key word, Asante. I've heard it throughout the morning when I toss it out to the panel and ask for, hopefully someone will pick up this topic for the conversation. We know that there are a lot of resources in our community. Access is that key word that we've touched on a few times. So having resources available and then having them accessible are 2 different things. You've touched on the WIC mobile unit and extending to the after hours for the food clinic. Susan, I think you've want to jump in, and I'll ask Marcus and Kim and others to jump in as well.
Yep. One of the things we see as social service providers or health and human services, we've all worked together. We all collaborate. Our agencies are just a small representation of what's already out there in the community helping folks. But we don't work in silos. We cross we cross the population that we serve, and we work together in collaboration and partnership. And we wouldn't be successful, none of us would be successful in our missions without that collaboration and partnership with each other. Speaking as a representative of an agency that provides mental health services and substance abuse services, there are so many individuals, and I think Dr. Scarborough touched on this, that have an underlying mental health condition or addictive disease condition. When you talk about children that drop out of school, about 40% of them have an underlying mental health condition. Children that are in juvenile justice, individuals that are incarcerated in the prison systems, individuals experiencing unemployment, individuals experiencing homelessness on the streets. Dr. Scarborough said over 50% of them have an underlying mental illness, and then probably another 20-25% have issues with substances, and they may be self-medicating with substances because of an underlying mental health condition. But we all work together, and we've got to treat these instances of individuals not in a silo. Somebody may need help from New Horizons, but then they may need employment services from Goodwill, and they may need access to health services through the health department. I know we send folks to Feeding the Valley all the time that need assistance with food. So we work together to make the community better. Well, we don't work in silos.
I'll jump in on what Susan just said. One of the things that we know as community resource providers that you can't be all things to all people. And there's a lot of need. We heard that earlier, that in some communities, what happens when there are no fish to give out? What happens when there are no fish left? Being collaborative as resource providers in the community is very important. But one of the things that turns people off that are in need, when you go to one place and you figure that they can help your need, and you feel like you have another door shoved in your face or closed in your face because they say, I can't do that here, but I have a friend down the street who can do that. Well, the barriers about transportation, childcare, I have someone who's watching my child now. I have a ride here now. I came to handle this now, but I can't get there tomorrow or the next day. And those are the realities of the population of the people that are in dire need, that really need services. And sometimes us, even as social services providers, we struggle with saying, how can we help them get to the next spot? And so the need is there, it's great. While there are a lot of resources, there's a lot of barriers that create problems for people accessing those resources here in the community.
And I think that's an area for opportunity for us working together, because people will reach that point of fatigue. So I've gone to this agency and I've done the intake process and I've worked with them, and I have to go to another agency and do the intake process over there and do that. So we're seeing that as an opportunity for us, even though we're not working in silo, but how can we better integrate so we can serve the population we're serving? Usually they're the same population. How can we work together to make that process a little easier for them to access the services we have?
Kim, you may be going in the direction, talking a little bit about the housing, the work that we're doing in terms of access around housing. I'd love for you to touch on that as a housing provider, if you could, in terms of the coordinated entry approach and how providers are coming together to meet the needs of working together in new and more collaborative ways.
Sure. I'll talk about that as well, but I just wanted to tell you a quick story related to what we were talking about a minute ago. I had a conversation a couple of years ago with a young lady who was a freshman in college. She had come through our program and she was learning to drive. She knew that as she went to college, she would need to not have to take the bus to get back and forth to work and back and forth to school. So she asked if I have a small car, so she asked if I could help her learn to parallel park. And I was like, of course. And so we went to the park and learned to parallel park. And shortly after, she asked me if I would help her get a car. And I assumed that meant go with her to look for a car. As the conversation continued, I realized she meant for me to go buy her a car. So that led to a different kind of conversation. But what happened as a result of that was I said something to her about, well, that's an expensive purchase, and so you need to save money, from your income, save some back so that you can purchase. And she said, what is income? And that was one of the most sobering conversations I've ever had with a young person, because here's a college freshman who had no idea what income was or how to obtain it. which led to us really taking a look at how are we teaching our young people to plan for their future? How are we talking about financial means? How are we talking about surviving when all you've seen are other people around you who live in poverty and who are struggling in the same ways that you are? And so we realized that that was an opportunity for us to talk about jobs, and then certainly with our community members like you to talk about job creation so that we could have opportunities for people to move into livable wage employment so that they can have sustainable income for themselves and their household. In relation to what you just asked me, the homeless system, services system in Columbus, which is called the Continuum of Care, has a process and an application through HUD, Department of Housing and Urban Development, to house people who are homeless. Over the past couple of years, the focus has really been a lot on housing vouchers, moving veterans from the streets into housing, moving persons who are mentally ill into supportive housing opportunities like what Susan does with New Horizons, and really helping people not live on the streets and continue to have to access so many resources from the street, but really be able to be stably housed with a voucher program in some form or fashion, and have an opportunity to go to work and stabilize their mental health condition and work on substance abuse issues or whatever the issues may be. What we have seen is a great reduction in the number of people who are living out on our streets. Open Door has a showering program for persons who are literally out on our streets, in abandoned buildings, in cars, in tents, wherever they may be. We've been doing it for 18 years, and it still remains the #1 program that we have as far as the largest number of people, but the number has been cut in half as far as the people who access that service. Over the past probably 5 years, that number has been cut in half. So the vouchers, the housing first model is definitely making a difference in our community. And Jennifer mentioned coordinated entry. That's the process through which persons call 211, they have an intake. There are other ways to get an intake, but they can get an intake through that system, and they can be referred to kind of that best placement, first placement provider, if you will.
Thank you. Susan, tell us one thing, that mental health is one of those aspects. We talk about physical health. We can see some signs of physical health and things that might need to be addressed. Mental health is something we don't always see. Help us be a better friend, coworker, family member to someone who may be suffering, experiencing mental health in silence. Help us be a better advocate for that in our community.
I think it begins with kindness. If we just became a kinder, more gentler society. Dr. Scarborough kept saying a community of shalom, and if we could all have that peace, that would be great. I've been talking for about a year now about stigmatization of the brain. It's an organ of the body that we tend to treat differently than other organs in the body. If somebody had problems with their pancreas that was causing diabetes, I hope I mentioned, is that the organ that would cause diabetes would be the pancreas. I might get the organs wrong, but you wouldn't stigmatize somebody for having diabetes. You would encourage them to get treatment. You might ask them to go on a walk. When it comes to brain health, we stigmatize the brain, and we look at it as an individual weakness with maybe somebody that's experiencing anxiety or mental health issues, mental health challenges. And I just think we need to realize that the brain is an organ like any other organ in the body. You can have health problems with your brain, and we need to be accepting and reduce stigma around it. And I think that would go a long way. We see a lot of celebrities now that are talking about their mental health challenges. People are talking more about suicide in the news, and the more we talk about it and the more we advocate for mental health, I think the better our services will become, and the better our mental health as a population will become. So stop the stigma.
Great. Thank you. Margelina, when you introduced yourself, you mentioned you work at the food bank and that you've also accessed and used several different agencies in town. Can you talk about that experience and share with us some exciting things that are going on in your life today?
As many people know in this room, I went through the House of Time. I came in 2010, and I'll have 10 years of sobriety in January from meth addiction. I've been very fortunate that I got a lot of support. And in that program, they taught us a lot of things. We did exercise. We learned to cook meals. We learned to budget our money. Because what I have found is a lot of times what we're doing, and I'm not saying anything negative about anything that anyone's doing, after we put someone into a house, there they are, and that's it. There needs to be more aftercare and other programs. But anyways, actually Sunday was I completed my degree, and I have a bachelor's in business at Troy University. I am a four-time convicted felon, and to look at me, you cannot tell all this stuff. 10 years ago when I walked in, you could see it written all over me, and it's because of programs in this community. And another thing, when we're going out looking for jobs, we need people to help us build our self-esteem, because I couldn't get a job because I didn't think that I was worthy of anything. And Feeding the Valley gave me an opportunity that, they said they cracked the door and I kicked it wide open and I got to slow down. My goal, when I got here, I didn't think I could work anywhere besides McDonald's, and there's nothing wrong with McDonald's. But today I know that I could eventually be CEO there or CEO somewhere else. And it's because of these programs, and I'm no longer that statistic. I had a very horrible childhood with lots of abuse, a child born out of rape and different things, but those things no longer have to hinder me. But I did not know that until I was educated on that, and that's why I say again and again, education is crucial. But also for these people that are in the program, these different programs, mentorship. Find someone that they can be mentored by, because I have a couple mentors, and they help me. I stutter, so I get nervous, and I have different issues. They help me to walk through that stuff, because 10 years ago I couldn't have sat here in front of you all you guys and thought that I'm equal with you, because I always thought that I wasn't, and I am. Your path was just a little different than mine. But I have a perspective that a lot of people don't have in this room, and that's because I've been through all that stuff, and I know that a lot of us can make it, but also something that when we're helping these people, are we helping them or are we hindering them? What is their responsibility when they step up to the plate to receive these resources? Are they volunteering? Now some people cannot, I understand that completely, but are we just giving and giving and giving? Or are we allowing them to become who they need to be? It's very important. And I think the only ugly thing I can say sometimes is there's not enough communication between all of us. Okay, like we're the food bank. If you need food, you should call us and find out how we do it, and we can help you. If we know somebody that needs housing, we can reach out to you and you and you. Sometimes that gets sidestepped. Be good at what you're good at. We're not, like they said, we're not all supposed to do the same thing. Since we have bought our own house, my husband was just ordained, and we're going to be pastors at a church. And what I'm saying is I was homeless and went to the House of Time and had 10 outfits, and that was it. And today we own our own home, we have cars, and it's not about any of that. But most of all, I have the security, and I know that I'm going to be okay. And that is so crucial, to have food, to have clothing, to know that I can turn the key on my own apartment, that I'm not getting abused, and that I was able also to use resources to deal with that abuse, because I didn't know how to deal with the fact that my son was born out of rape. So all these things, all of the community has helped me become the woman that I am. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Margelina. Thank you for letting me be part of your journey, and thank you for sharing with so many of us. You are an inspiration, and congratulations on your degree. I think we have time for maybe a couple of questions.
Hello, Charmaine Crab. I have a question. I know you're not a silo, and so I'm wondering, is there one location that somebody can go to and put applications in for all the assistance from all the different organizations?
There, in terms of all of the services that exist in our community, there is not at this time. I'll offer two resources and then turn it back over to Asante. As Kim mentioned, for housing, for someone who is
unsheltered and seeking housing services, calling 211 will start a coordinated shared application process. And within a database that is shared among, there's a data sharing agreement among the housing providers so that it is about finding that best right fit. In terms of resources, 211 Information and Referral is a great resource. It is not an application process, but it is a central place where information and resources on a variety of health and human service and nonprofit resources in our community exist. That can be accessed by simply calling 211 or texting 898-211.
Would it assist you to have, other than just the 211, but have like a hub or something that an individual could go to one-stop shop and get the needed, all of you are there at one place in being represented by somebody so that there's one place that they can go instead of having to go here and there, because transportation sounds like it's an issue. Would that assist you?
I would say what you just described is the most ideal scenario. That's what we want. That would be great if we could have that, but we're not there yet. Us as the health department, we're working with the Poverty Reduction Coalition to see if we can develop something like what you just described, a place where you can apply to multiple agencies with one-stop shopping. But it doesn't exist yet.
Is that something that the local government could help you with?
I think that's an area for us to explore. It's an opportunity area.
Okay. Thank you.
And we have gotten the stop sign. So I want to thank the panel for being here today. Thank you for sharing thank you for your service to the community and sharing. And Marjolina, your story is a story of hope and promise. And I just encourage us all to see that opportunity and be the source of hope for our friends, our families, our coworkers, and help inspire others to do great things in our community. Our panel members, I think two at least are staying throughout today and tomorrow. Asante and Susan are part of the 2-day tour, so if you have additional questions, please see them. And I think our other panel members, invite them to stay for just a few minutes as we start lunch. And so if there are other questions, please feel free to ask. Thanks for your time.
Is not being honest with itself. And as you heard from the Columbus 2025 talk this morning, we have real issues in our community, but I believe because we love each other, we can find ways to work together to move our community forward to be what we want it to be. So my hope for all of us is that over these 2 days, we're learning a lot of the what and maybe some of the why, and talking to each other about some of the why. And then when we leave, the thought will be, how might we work together to advance this community farther, even faster? So as we think about community leadership, because that's what that is, I'm going to introduce our speaker today and tell you I'm just so glad anytime he's in our community, it's a better community. Otis White actually grew up here. And at the risk of dating you, I will tell you that he just celebrated his 50th reunion from Columbus High School. And I know this because they were good enough to invite me to a program. They did a real interesting documentary. Let me make sure I got this right. Y'all were the first class to be fully integrated and go all the way through Columbus High, I think, which is fantastic. And they did a little documentary for their reunion about what that experience was like and how it had changed the people who were part of that from every perspective. And I loved getting included and getting to see it. So Otis left here, and I'm going to tell you that his bio is in our great little handy flip chart, and I want you to refer to it. For 25 years, he's been the head of Civic Strategies, which I'm going to describe as a company that helps communities dream better and helps build civic leadership. And he has always been interested in civic leadership in Columbus, and I'm sure he's going to talk a little bit about that today. How what looks like leadership in our community has changed over the years. I'm going to tell you that I don't want to blow your surprise, but he loves Columbus, which is great. And I love it when you call me every now and then and kind of talk through something that you've heard about this community and is this true, and y'all are really thinking about this. So I'm also going to commend to you a story that he wrote. At one point, he was a business journalist, and you may be interested to know he was the first editor and publisher of Georgia Trend magazine. And back in March of 2011, you were no longer at Georgia Trend then, but he wrote this article, and I'm going to tell you I have one copy of it with me today. I'm happy to kind of pass it around. I love this article. It's called Urban Revival, the Building That Changed Columbus. And so the picture is the River Center, but the article talks about a lot more than just the River Center. It talks about how leadership in Columbus created an opportunity that let us imagine a reality different than what we saw every day. So this is kind of a micro course in how we got to where we are. And maybe it's something that Richard Bishop and his team can share with all of you later electronically. But if you want my hard copy, I've got it. I'm going to sit down because every minute you get with Otis White is a great minute. So Otis, join us. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Betsy. You are too kind and too generous, and I can only disappoint from this point forward. So thank you for inviting me here today, Mayor Henderson. Thank you for inviting me. It's good to be home. It's good to be home. And it's especially good to come back to a city that is far better than the one I left in early 1976 when I moved away. Now, there probably aren't many people in this room as old as me who can remember those days, but frankly, Columbus was a tired, old city in the 1970s with a fading economy that was built on textiles and the military, and it was a pretty dispirited and cynical group of people who lived in Columbus. I was a reporter back then for the Columbus Ledger, and in 1975, I wrote a series of articles on downtown Columbus, and for the series I had visited Montgomery and Macon and Augusta, three cities that were somewhat like Columbus in size and in position and geography, to see what cities that were like us were doing about their downtowns. Now, I'm going to spare you the 10,000 words I wrote in this series of articles, and I'm going to give you the headline, because here was the headline. Not only did Columbus in 1975 have the worst downtown in both appearance and economic vitality of any of these cities, it was the only one that had no plan for changing things. In fact, didn't even have much public or political will to change things. Well, what a difference a few decades can make. Today, people in Montgomery and Macon and Augusta come to Columbus to learn how do we change a downtown. Seriously, I've gone all over Georgia, and one question that people constantly ask me is, how'd they do that in Columbus? How'd they do that? How'd they change that downtown the way they did? So I hope you feel as good about your progress as a city as I do, because I'm here to tell you, you are the envy of your sister cities. Now, if I understand it, that thought is sort of in keeping with part of this event, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly tour. It's the same name as an event that was held in 1997, which endeavored to look at Columbus with fresh and fearless eyes, and sought to learn what had we done well and what do we now need to work on. And as it turns out, I spoke at that event as well. And my job back then was to say, here's what's going on with other cities around the country. here's how Columbus sort of fits into the big picture of things. And I think that's at least part of my job here today. Now, the good part is I've given you some of the good stuff. Columbus has made astonishing progress since 1976. In fact, it's made astonishing progress since 1997, which was the first time this event was done. So I want to start today by just telling you how much you have changed in 22 years, because sometimes when you live in a city, it's really hard to see the change that's going on around you. It's like you need one of those before and after photographs. You can see this is the way it was, and this is the way it is. So I want to give you the before picture. In 1997, again, this is the last time we looked at Columbus as the good, the bad, and the ugly. The last time we did that. You'd already built, I'm going backward here, sorry about that. There we are. You'd already built the Ironworks Convention Center, and you'd gotten a start on the Riverwalk. Columbus had a brand new art museum, replacing the old Bradley Museum. You'd built a spectacular civic center. You'd fixed the combined sewer problems, the same problems that Atlanta is struggling with to this day. You already fixed those. You had hosted one of the games of the 1996 Summer Olympics in a brand new softball complex. Oh, and Columbus College had just become a university, Columbus State University. Now you put all these things together, this was an awful lot of progress to be made in a city that 20 years before had been old, tired, dispirited, cynical Columbus. But as it turned out, that was just the prelude. So here's the after picture. If I could do this the right way. The River Center was built. Columbus State University began to move to its downtown campus. That set off an incredible revival of uptown Columbus. Hundreds of millions of dollars was raised for both Columbus State University and the arts in two amazing fundraising drives. The Infantry Museum was built at Fort Benning, one of the finest military museums in the world. Along Macon Road, you turned a failed shopping mall into one of the state's best public libraries. A pedestrian bridge was built across the Chattahoochee River so you could see whitewater. Whitewater. There was whitewater in Columbus? You found whitewater. Oh, and zip lines. And with these things, Columbus became an honest-to-goodness tourist destination for the first time in its history. And as a result of these things, new event spaces were built along the river, including this one. Now, you put all these things together, before 97 and after 97, and this is a tidal wave of civic progress by any city's standards. And I hope everybody in this room appreciates just how far this city has come and how fast the change has been. But, and you knew there was going to have to be a but in there somewhere. The road ahead will be, if not more difficult than the last 40 years, it's certainly going to be different and require a different approach. And to understand why, I'd like to use a metaphor that I learned 20 years ago in a book by a Harvard professor named Rosabeth Moss Kanter. And in the book she wrote, and I'm going to boil it way down for you here, that what successful cities needed were magnets and they needed glue. They needed things that brought people to the city in the first place. It could be a strong and growing economy, big but it could be a university like Columbus State University, which draws people from the outside. I don't know if this is still true, but I'm confident this, if I'm not correct in saying this, I'm almost correct in saying this. Columbus State University's freshman class has at least half of the class comes from the Atlanta metro area, which I find just astonishing that that's the case. But my understanding is that the incoming freshman classes at Columbus State University these days is half made up of people from the Atlanta metro area coming to Columbus. So the magnet could be a university that pulls students in from the outside. It could be a beautiful and fun downtown, which you now have. So all of this is the magnet stuff. It gets people to move to a city, or at least come here for a visit, maybe go to Whitewater, say, wow, this is really a cool town, and consider moving there. But if a city is successful in the long haul, Professor Cantor wrote, it has to be good at holding people there, so that if the job goes away or the young person graduates from college, they don't want to leave. They'll start their own company. They'll look for another job. They'll change their entire line of work. They'll do anything to stay in the city because it has such a hold on them. Now, I think Columbus in the last 30 or 40 years has done an amazing job of building magnets. And you've done some really good work on creating glue that you'll need to keep people in this community, like having access to a beautiful and fun downtown and building the arts in Columbus. And just simply being a friendly and welcoming city, which Columbus has always been. But I think you're going to need more glue. And here's the difficult part. Because what people really identify with, what really holds them in a place, isn't usually the city as much as it is their neighborhood. So if you want Columbus to continue its success and to do so in bad times as well as in good, you're going to have to find ways of strengthening neighborhoods. And that's going to be, again, if not more difficult, certainly a different task than the 40-year task of building a great downtown. Why? Well, there are a lot of reasons, but I'm going to give you 3 of them. The first is downtowns have large commercial interests. Duh. And these interests can contribute to efforts to improve the downtowns. That's a big reason the Uptown Business District exists today, is to help out, to marshal these commercial interests, to help in the continued renaissance of Uptown Columbus. Now, nobody in this room is going to be surprised that these large commercial interests, by and large, do not exist in most of our neighborhoods. The second thing is downtowns are used by pretty much everybody. I remember being with a woman once in a city in Florida, and she said, you know, everybody feels like they have 2 neighborhoods in this town. They have their neighborhood, and then they have downtown. That's sort of seen as neutral ground. So that when a government invests in a downtown, a lot of people will support it because at some point everybody thinks, well, I'll walk on that Riverwalk, or I'll go to an event down at the Civic Center, or I'll take a stroll across that Frank Martin Bridge. But neighborhoods aren't like that. Mostly they are for the people who live in them, not for outsiders. So if the government spends money in your neighborhood and not in this neighborhood, a lot of people there think, and I think a little bit unfairly, but naturally, well, I'm not going to get any benefit from the money that's spent over here. I want it to be spent over there. But the third, and maybe the most important reason that this is going to be a different task, and I think maybe even a more difficult task than the great turnaround of downtown Columbus, is that over the 1980s and 90s, city after city developed a kind of playbook for turning around downtowns, using streetscapes and walkability and housing and mixed-use development and events and concerts and nightlife and business improvement districts and transit and so on. Now, as Richard Bishop will tell you, none of this stuff is easy. None of it is easy, but at least it is known. And if you do it well, the downtown should respond. We don't have a playbook for strengthening neighborhoods yet. Maybe one day we will. Hopefully we will soon. But for the moment, when it comes to neighborhoods and how you turn around or how you strengthen or simply how you keep a strong neighborhood strong, we're kind of like downtowns were in the 1970s. We're still trying to figure this stuff out. So what do? Given all these things, the known and the unknown, how do we help neighborhoods be safe and welcoming and attractive? How do we tackle what I think is going to be the next great chapter for Columbus, and we create more glue that holds people here? Well, as you know, and you've probably heard a little bit of it today, the government can do some things for troubled neighborhoods. It can condemn and tear down abandoned houses. It can enforce building codes. It can clean up vacant lots. It can put more cops on the beat. If you can ever hire enough cops, every police department I know anywhere in the country, and probably the one here in Columbus, is understaffed because they have trouble recruiting police officers. You could offer some social programs that will help children, recreation centers, these sorts of things. And this stuff will help. It really will help in neighborhoods, at least for the short term. But eventually the focus will shift from one neighborhood to another. And then what happens? Well, as the Bible says, we should be careful not to build our houses on shifting sand. We should build houses on solid rock. And the rock of neighborhoods, ultimately, is the people who live there. So this, I think, will be the great challenge for Columbus as it moves into this next era. To keep the progress going in Uptown Columbus, absolutely. But to focus more and more on neighborhoods, working with the only asset you have in neighborhoods, which are the people who live there. And the key to success, I believe, is to work with neighborhoods, not to work for neighborhoods. And the first step in doing that is to build more and more neighborhood involvement and leadership. To find ways of getting more and more people in neighborhoods involved in any activity that has a community focus, from neighborhood associations and crime watch groups and PTAs to recreation leagues, creating community gardens, good neighbor days at churches and synagogues. I heard Marquette speaking earlier about what she was trying to do in this neighborhood. That is absolutely right. Dr. Scarborough talked about 85% of people in any neighborhood, and I mean whether you're talking about Hilton Road or this neighborhood here, 85% of the people are good people who love their neighborhood, want to do well by it, and 15% on all parts of the city are stinkers. You need to concentrate on the 85%. Because whenever you have active and informed neighborhood leaders, they magnify whatever the government or any other outside group can do there. And that's because when people put their own time and energy into making an improvement, and maybe put the proceeds from a bake sale or two in it, they're not going to let these things fall apart later on, not without a fight. And that is a house that's built on solid ground. Now, I told you that my role today was to tell you what was going on around the country and how Columbus sort of fits into the big picture. And I'm here to tell you right now, this is the same challenge that is being faced by cities everywhere in the country. As we enter the third decade of the 21st century, many cities have figured out how to turn their downtowns around. They haven't done it as dramatically as Columbus has done it. They're not quite where you are yet, but they're all playing off that same playbook. And now they're looking for ways of strengthening their neighborhoods while making sure, again, that the downtowns continue their progress. This is the story in Seattle, in Denver, in Pittsburgh, in Tampa, in Detroit, which has seen a remarkable turnaround. If you haven't been to Detroit in the last 5 years, you need to go and just see how much the downtown of Detroit has turned around, and the Midtown area. But it hasn't gotten very far into the neighborhoods of Detroit. Oh, and by the way, in Montgomery, Macon, and Augusta, yeah, they're working out of the same playbook on their downtowns, and they're all trying to write a playbook for their neighborhoods. And in this effort, I don't see any path forward for neighborhoods that doesn't involve getting the residents who are there involved as active partners. So how do we do that? how do we get more people, just average citizens, the residents, involved in neighborhood improvement efforts? And I have to tell you, that's a really good question. I'm working on a project in Atlanta right now. We're trying to figure out how to build thoughtful and effective neighborhood leaders. And we're just getting started in this. In some ways, we're trying to write that playbook, or at least that chapter that involves the first step is to get the residents involved in this. And frankly, when Betsy and the mayor asked me to come here, that was one of the reasons I wanted to come. And it wasn't to tell you the answer, but to ask you for the answer. I want to ask your help today to help us figure out, how do you get more people involved in neighborhood improvement? Again, in the neighborhood associations, the crime watch groups, the PTAs, the scout troops, the recreation stuff, the community gardens, so that neighbors know neighbors, and we create more of that glue that makes people want to stay in cities, and we make our neighborhoods better. Now, incidentally, as these photographs sort of demonstrate, nothing brings people together in a neighborhood quite like children do. And I don't know if you had the same experience I had as a kid, but my first and some of my best friends to this day are the people I met as children living down the street from me up in North Columbus. So it turns out not only do we form connections as children, but I learned as a parent that my children ended up connecting me to a lot of people in the neighborhood. I met them through the PTA, got to know the folks there. So here's what I'd like to ask you to do. I want to ask you to come up with some answers. I'm going to make a few notes as you talk, and heads up, if you come up with some good ideas, I'm going to steal them, and I'm going to take them back to Atlanta. But don't worry, Betsy's got my number, so one way or the other, this is probably going to come back to Columbus. So here's the question I want you to consider. How can we get more people involved in making their neighborhoods better? What can the city do? What could other groups in the community do? And what can you do? So what I'd like to ask you to do is just turn to the people at your table in twos and threes. Just talk for a few moments about what your ideas are, what you could do, what again, the city could do, another group could do, you can do, to begin to get people involved in improving their neighborhoods. And then I'll ask you to come up with I want to hear some of your ideas. So start talking. This is a particularly intelligent-looking group right here. So let me just ask, what was the best idea that came out of here that you heard?
Well, we think having organized neighborhoods that are proud of where they live, that engage with their neighbors, that take the time to meet their neighbors and who they are, gives them a sense of community.
All right. So if you could get pride built in a neighborhood, that will draw more people into it. So does anybody have any ideas about how to do that? Anybody come up with an idea of how you sort of build neighborhood pride? The second most intelligent.
We appreciate being number 2. So it starts with each neighbor. It starts with each house. A neighbor might put some flowers out. You might have a young couple move into a home and renovate that home, and then it's contagious.
Did you all hear that? So the most intelligent group said, hey, if we could just have more pride in the neighborhood, we could get more people involved. And the second most intelligent table here said, and the way you do that is one person at a time. You just take pride in your house, you put some flowers out, you make it look nice. The next door neighbor will say, wow, I didn't know you could do that. And that's sort of how you begin to build pride, one house at a time. All right, what other ideas? Who had an idea? The most intelligent, not most intelligent, handsomest table.
Is that what it is? Okay, so our table identified to the first question is 1, creating a common cause for that community to rally around, and then most importantly, identifying a champion or group of champions for that particular community.
So, if you heard what Adrian said, if you could begin by identifying a challenge for the neighborhood, and there is, I don't think there's in the history of community improvement, the DOT in any state has been the greatest unifier of neighborhoods that you have ever seen. Because when they want to come in and tear up your neighborhood, that will bring people together like crazy. So DOTs are well known. So that might be one of the challenges, but it might be something else. It might be a crime problem, or it might be a health problem, or something else. But something that the neighborhood can begin to rally around can bring people in. Other ideas? I don't want to neglect this part of the room. The end of the day, people are actually sitting down and meeting their neighbors and not just lobbying insults at each other through social media. This is great. And it's a great facilitator of conversation. But it has to end with face-to-face. One more idea, because you all have something else to do this afternoon. What's the last great idea that I can steal and take back to Atlanta? Yes, Marquette.
Exactly what you said about the kids, those lifelong friends, and we do think it starts with kids and families coming together, as Katie was saying, coming together in communal moments. But what we believe that the city could help with is returning some more passive park land so that kids have places to play and they're not necessarily going to recreational super centers outside their neighborhoods.
Got it. So the city can do things to create spaces within neighborhoods, small parks, that neighbors can meet one another, maybe by walking their dogs. They're walking their dogs down and they meet them at the park. And next thing you know, they're Facebook friends and they're having potluck dinners and they've got a cause to come about, and they're building neighborhood pride, and we've unified there's an entire unified playbook that we have here pretty soon. Thank you. I have run out of time today. I thank you. You have helped me a great deal in thinking about how to take on this problem. And I'm excited for what's going to happen in Columbus in the next era of progress here. So thank you again.